You are listening to Be Amplified, the podcast with Bri and Thais, episode number 6.
Hey Amplifiers, welcome to Be Amplified, the podcast. My name is Thais.
And I'm Bri Seeley. We are the co-founders of the Amplify Collective,
A movement aimed at radically disrupting how purpose-driven women connect and operate in the world.
because we believe it's not just what you do, but who you are that matters.
Each week, join us for messages and interviews that will leave you feeling amplified and ready to change the world.
Let's do this.
Hey, we're so excited to talk to you today.
Hey, Amplifiers.
So before we get into our conversation, we wanted to read this review because, well, it touched my heart because it's about me, but it's also about us. And I just love it so much. And I wanted to read it out. So Bri, read it for us.
I had the pleasure, this is from ENC44. I had the pleasure of participating in Thais' coaching programs and worked with her one-on-one.
And I'm amazing.
And when I heard she was doing a podcast, I couldn't wait to listen. Her and Bri authentically dive into how you can be amplified in all areas of your life. They are incredibly inspirational, and you can't help but feel fired up and full of positivity and motivation after listening. A must listen.
Thank you, darling. We love you and appreciate every single one of you guys that are listening in to us.
And everyone that's given us feedback. This has been a really fun process that, Thais and I had the vision for it, but you never really know how it's going to be received. And so we've had women private messaging us about how impactful it's been. We actually just got a message from someone that they cried through one of the episodes. Another woman who said that she felt like she was sitting down just having a cup of tea with us. And it's been, thank you guys. Seriously, thank you.
Yeah, it means the world. And so keep rating us, keep reviewing us. We'd love to read the review out loud and share you with the world. And, we are people, and we're listening, and we're watching, and we're sharing from our hearts. So it means the world that you guys can see it. And then, we do have some events coming up here in Los Angeles. That's what we do. That's part of our power, is amazing events. And we have some really exciting ones coming up. And we have some events for our Coterie members, which is our membership group. We have a group of women that we get to support in a deeper way through our membership. And we have some events for them coming up too. So make sure that you are staying tuned at I'm like, what is our website? theamplifycollective.com. And you can see our events there. You can see the podcast show notes and all that good stuff.
There's one event in particular that I want to highlight. So we do a non-members event once a month, and it has been a truly transformative event. Like, the women that walk away not with business cards, but with actual dates in their calendar and text message threads that have already started to connect with the women on a deeper level. And our next one is on June 22nd, and it's at the Blow Dry Salon in Brentwood. And so we would love to invite you and have you there in the room with us. If you're in Los Angeles, please consider coming to join us. The URL for that is amplifybdb.eventbrite.com. So
our events sell out. So if you're hearing this and you're interested in joining us, make sure that you go to the website. Can you say it one more time, Bri?
amplifybdb, that's for blow dry bar, .eventbrite.com.
And we'll be sure to also add that to the show notes.
Absolutely.
So you guys have access to that. All right.
So what are we talking about today, Thais?
All right. First off, we have an amazing guest coming up a little bit later. And one of the things that I thought we should talk about to preempt this guest is the conversation around being uncomfortable.
So you mean like the fact that we're sitting on the floor and my back hurts right now, right?
Yep, pretty much. That's exactly what I mean. But being uncomfortable, I don't mean just physically, but also mentally and spiritually. And part of being uncomfortable, part of the conversation around being uncomfortable is also the conversation around quantum leaps and the conversation about up-leveling and what does that look like in your life. So I'm excited to dive in. I feel like we have a lot to say on this subject, and I know you're going to love it.
Yeah. So for me, one of my measures is always whether I'm uncomfortable enough. I joke that I'm like done being uncomfortable. I'm kind of done being uncomfortable. And at the same time, I know that when I'm in that uncomfortable place, that's where my greatest growth happens. That's where my greatest impact happens. And so Thais and I both kind of live by this rule of thumb that we need to be uncomfortable. We almost go out of our way to be uncomfortable.
It's like whatever you can imagine is the most uncomfortable scenario for you, see if you can do it. I see it from my dad. You know, he's naturally an introvert. He naturally doesn't gravitate towards talking to other people, and he's made it a mission as he stepped into being an executive to talk to random people. And now he goes up to random strangers all the time and sparks conversations with them. And what I love about that is that I know that it's uncomfortable for him, and he's willing to do it. He's willing to do it for the greater call, which is he loves to be around people. And in order to be around people, he has to get uncomfortable. And so wherever it is that you may be feeling uncomfortable, or you may be feeling super comfortable in your life, we challenge you. We challenge you to step it up and get uncomfortable and see if you can get uncomfortable every day on some capacity. And it doesn't have to look the same way every day, but the more that you can get uncomfortable, really what you're forcing yourself to do is to grow.
So, Thais, let's get a little personal.
Okay.
I want to know, what is one of the most uncomfortable things that you've ever done?
That's a great question.
I know. I'm sitting here thinking about the answer too, because I know that after you're done, you're going to be like, your turn.
Okay, so one of the most uncomfortable things I have done, I have to say, is cold calling. When I first began my business, I wanted to put myself out there in a big way, and I knew that there were people that I wanted to coach. And I had to do this big, scary thing where I called them and told them that I want to coach them. And that was really uncomfortable. And I did over 50 of those calls and got over 50 no's. And that's not fun. It's not fun to get no's. It's not fun to put yourself out on the limb and get no's. It's not fun to have that relationship change, because sometimes it changes when you receive a no from someone, or you put yourself in a position of changing from being a friend to being a business partner, or not partner, but going from being in friendship to being in business, and approaching them in that way. And sometimes the relationship changes because of it. And that was a really uncomfortable time in my life. And every single one of those calls were radically uncomfortable for me. And you may be thinking, well, then why the hell did you do it? And why didn't you stop? And why would you keep putting yourself in a place where it's uncomfortable? And honestly, it's because I knew that if I got really good in that type of conversation, I would be really good at offering my services to people who want it. So part of this being in business is being in sales, which is something that not a lot of people talk about. Entrepreneurialism is not just, oh, I want to coach, so I get to coach all the time. Well, in order to coach all the time, you have to have clients. In order to have clients, you first have to put yourself out there. And that includes sales. And so the more I force myself to have these uncomfortable conversations and get better and better at sales and feel more intuitively what it's like to have those types of sales conversations and pitch myself and put myself out there in a big way, the more I realize that, one, no's don't define me. And I can still be a really brilliant coach, and I can still make a lot of money even if I get a lot of no's. And two, everything that you want is on the other side of fear. And I really wanted clients, and I really wanted to support people. And I knew that I had to put myself out there in order to do it. So I'd say that's probably one of the most uncomfortable, at least time spans for me, where I was really committed to growing my business in a radical way. And I knew that that's what I had to do. But if, it's hard. It's hard to put yourself out there. And one of the things that I've also realized is that the ego doesn't define us. And that's the only thing that really gets uncomfortable, is the ego. Because our spirit, our deep essence, it doesn't give a shit. It's just totally good. We just get so identified with who we are that we then get so scared to risk our identity by putting ourselves out there and risk looking like a fool and making mistakes. But at the end of the day, all that's just ego. And what does it really matter?
Yeah.
So what about you,
Beautiful.
Bri?
I think most of my most uncomfortable times have come when I have to either stand up for myself or promote myself.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's taken me a long time to find my voice in those areas. Specifically, I hate letting other people down. So that's definitely something that makes me uncomfortable. And because of that, I've stayed, my relationship that I left 7 years ago, I stayed in that relationship too long because I couldn't stand up for myself. And I wasn't I wasn't excited about being uncomfortable in telling him what my needs were and being
Mm,
uncomfortable in having to forge a new path for myself. And so, I mean, it was one of the best things I did. And I think I waited a little bit too long to do it.
yeah,
Or, putting myself out there. Like another thing that people don't talk about in business is that, Tyson and I didn't get on KTLA on accident. We pitched ourselves. Most of the press that I've gotten is because I put myself out there and I pitched myself. And it took me a long time to learn how to sell myself without coming off as too salesy or too needy or in those ways or too like braggy. And so it's been such a fine line of finding my voice in a comfortable way or I guess an uncomfortable way that produces, positive results on the other side and really stands for who I am and what I need in the world.
totally. I love it. And I think this is a really potent conversation because what I've seen in my life is, I'm still Facebook friends with the many people that I went to elementary school with, middle school, high school with. And I look at where they are in their life. And I look at where some other people that I went to high school are in their lives. And I can't help but compare because, one, that's what our mind does. We compare. And we all came from the same town. We got the same education. And there's some people that are really fulfilling their potential and really going after what they want. And you can tell they're like, just thriving and living and having such passions around their lives. And then there's others who are dwindling and who are suffering and who are miserable in their lives. And I ask myself, well, what's the difference? What's the difference between the success stories and the people who aren't, who are living in mediocrity? And they can fool themselves into believing that they're happy. But I know that if you get to the heart of where they are, they're not happy. So what is the difference? And I found that it's the amount of uncomfortableness they were willing to handle is what determines people's success. And the people who are thriving are people who put themselves out there a lot, who asked for what they wanted a lot, who decided that they would rather wait to be comfortable later in life. I mean, people who, this is another thing. People that are successful tend to wait for the payout. And there's a study, a mushroom, not mushroom, the marshmallow test, and it's a pretty famous psychological study where they gave kids these marshmallows, and they said, and they wanted to see how long these kids could wait without eating the marshmallow, and they said they put a marshmallow down in front of them, and they said if you can wait 5 minutes, you'll get 2 marshmallows, and then they just left the room. And the kids who were able to wait, who prolonged their enjoyment, who prolonged it and got the second marshmallow, are now the kids that are finding the most success in life. It's this prolonged sense of comfortableness or prolonged sense of getting what you want and really being just thirsty for life that creates situations and opportunities that lead you into the life that you want.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's a really cool study. And I think that that's so true. People that think that life is about being comfortable and think that life is about acquiring a lot of crap and putting it around themselves and getting married and having children and just settling down in that capacity. I mean, and they do it when they're 20 years old. I mean, then what? Then what are they going to do for the rest of their lives? And again, there's not judgment if you want to get married and have children and settle down. There's nothing wrong with settling down. It's the energy behind it. Are you settling down because you want to get comfortable and you don't really want to achieve and succeed and put yourself out there? Or is this just part of your plan, and you just have a real desire to show up in this way?
What's the quantum leap that's ringing closest to your heart right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest quantum leap that I chose was to hire a $25,000 coach when I was making less than $1,000 in my business. I mean, that was a huge quantum leap for me because it forced me to look at money in a whole different way. I mean, $25,000, you think, oh my gosh, that's a car, that's a luxury car. Or you can think of it as a down payment in a house. And when you equate it with that type of purchase, it can seem insane to want to invest that type of money in yourself and in your business. I mean, that's like a year in college, right? So for me, that was a huge shift where I went from operating in the hundreds to now operating in the thousands. And I had to show up in a different way in my business. I had to show up as the type of woman who invests that type of money. And I had to show up in a way that supports clients in investing, Not necessarily that type of money, but that type of money. Because once I invested in a $25,000 coach, I realized that charging $350 a month for my programs was undervaluing myself. And so I had to really look at money in a whole different way. And at first, it was really scary. When I made that first payment on a credit card of $6,500, I just remember being like, holy shit, I've never carried financial credit card debt in my life, and I had no way of knowing how I was going to pay that off, and it was really scary. And I realized in that quantum leap, because this is the magic of quantum leaps, I realized that I was really identifying myself around my credit score. I was really hardcore identifying myself as a good person because I had a high credit score. I had a finance degree from college. I knew how to handle my money, and this is a reflection of that. And so I made it mean something about myself. And when I now had a credit card debt for investing in my business, I had to look at that story and decide, does that mean I'm no longer a good person? And I don't think I'm a bad person because I want to invest in my growth and invest in my business. So I had to change my mindset around it and decided that, you know what, I can have credit card debt. I can have, if it lowered my credit score, that's okay. I was not attached to my credit score as defining who I am. And I think that's the part of quantum leaps. It requires you to, and getting uncomfortable, is that it requires you to shed a lot of beliefs about your potential.
Yeah. And really see your situation from a different perspective.
Totally. So what about you? What's a quantum leap that really calls to you?
I mean, I think my biggest one that I can relate to right now was my move to Los Angeles, because up until the point that I just made the decision to move here, everyone's like, well, you lived in Florence. How was moving to Los Angeles a big deal? Every decision I had made about where I lived and what I was doing was made to escape something else. So I went to college to get out of my hometown. And I went to the college I went to so that I could get out of there. Like, I went to the college I went to because they had a cooperative program that meant that I got to leave that college like a year early. And then, I had to escape Florence because I didn't have a visa. And went to the first place that hired me. And so every place that I had gone to was basically like just following the breadcrumbs of what was in front of me, taking whatever was there, not wanting for more than that, and just using it as an escape from whatever I was not happy with in my current life. So the decision to move to LA, I gave myself 9 months, and I kind of freaked out about it for 9 months. And the closer I got to my move date, the more I freaked out about it, up until the point where I almost didn't even move here. And I think the thing that we have to do more than anything when we're taking quantum leaps and when we're uncomfortable is trusting in the process.
Totally.
And just really surrendering and knowing, like, I had a deeper knowing that if I stayed in Washington any longer, that it was going to be detrimental to me.
Yeah.
And I knew that I had to get out. And I was fucking terrified.
Yeah.
I didn't know what LA was going to be like. I'd come here multiple times, and, I felt like I had set up a good area for myself, and I almost didn't do it. And so it just came to a point where I had to trust that it was all unfolding exactly as it was supposed to. And yeah, I had a few bumps along the way, as everyone does in their journeys. The first day we left Olympia, I got my car stuck and had to be towed out of a ditch.
Oh my gosh.
And a friend of mine was like, he was in the car with me and he's like, is this a sign that you shouldn't be leaving? And I was like, no, this is a sign that this place is not for me. I need to get the fuck out and never come back again.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that was my biggest quantum leap, was really making a decision to, like I said earlier, take a stand for myself. Take a stand for what I needed in order to be happy, in order to be, a functioning, healthy human being in the world and be serving with my gifts in a really big way.
Being uncomfortable and being in risk and quantum leaps are necessary for the human condition. And there's a false conception that life is about getting comfortable. And it's not really the point of life. It's really not the point for why we're here. We're here to grow ourselves. And the only way you can grow yourself is if you commit to getting uncomfortable. And it can look different for different people. And what I consider uncomfortable may for you not be, and vice versa. And you have to really look at your life and ask yourself, where have I gotten too complacent?
Yeah.
Where have I decided that this is as good as it's going to get? And I would argue that this is not as good as it's going to get, and that there is something more that you can be doing. And this growth desire within you is to be honored, or else you'll grow resentful. You'll grow resentful and frustrated with your life. And this is usually when we find numbing techniques like watching
Hmm.
TV or drinking alcohol, drinking alcohol
For
or
me, it's sleeping. I know that when I'm, before I broke up with my ex 7 years ago, I found myself sleeping all the time. I would get up in the morning, I would go to my job, I would come home, and I would go basically straight to bed. And, I might get up for dinner, but then I would go straight back to bed. I was sleeping all the time. And that was my way of disconnecting because I was coasting. I like to think of it like you put on cruise control on your car, right? You put zero effort into anything and you're just going. And yes, you're still moving, but you're not moving at the trajectory that you could be moving or that would serve your highest potential.
yeah, so do it. Do it afraid, do it big, do it from your heart. At the end of the day, wherever it is that you're feeling yourself getting too stuck in a routine or a pattern is probably you feeling you playing small. There's always another level. There's always another game, another play that you can be doing that's going to take you to new levels. And you owe it to yourself. You owe it to your life. You owe it
Mhm.
to the brilliance within you. You owe it to your soul to pursue it fervently more than anything else in life. Stop fucking obsessing with the small shit and go out there in a big way. Though if we could empower everybody who's listening, every man and woman, to decide to claim their power and to decide to put themselves out there in a big way, I mean, we would see a huge shift in our society. The problem is we get so bogged down by the details. We get so bogged down by the little things that we forget that this life is meant to be enjoyable, it's meant to be fun, and that starts when you get uncomfortable.
And one thing that I've found and that Thais and I both have absolutely found with the Amplify Collective is not to look too far in the future. If there's a desire within you, stop what ifing about the future and just do it. Because if you look too far in the future, like I can straight up tell you that if Thais and I had looked in August into the future of the Amplify Collective and had known the amount of work and effort and all of the stuff that went with starting a business, together in addition to the businesses we were already running, I can almost guarantee you both of us would have said, oh, hell no. But we didn't look too far into the future. We looked at the calling that we were being asked to fill by the universe. We looked at the women that were saying yes and that were transforming their lives because of it. And we chose to focus on that. And instead of looking at all the minute details, we took that as our calling and we ran with that. And yes, on everyday basis, we do have to look at the details. But we had, like, up until a point, we hadn't looked too far forward because had we looked too far forward too early, we probably would have said no.
Yeah. I love Marie Forleo. She's known for saying everything is figure outable. Everything is figure outable. You can figure out anything, but you have to give yourself first permission to start and to try it. And, give yourself permission to change your mind if necessary and to waver off the course if you feel like that's where you need to be. But at the end of the day, if you focus too far on the result and on the future and too far into the future, it becomes a paralysis. And so you want to find just the right balance where it excites you, it energizes you, and you have a vision that you can move towards while simultaneously allowing that to pull you forward instead of getting bogged down by it. Being uncomfortable is good. It's so good. So who can you speak to that you've been too nervous to speak to? Who can you pitch that you've been too nervous and you've been waiting to pitch until it's the right time? Who can you, call, or who can you text? Who can you email that's going to elevate you to the next level?
One thing that I hear a lot from starting entrepreneurs, like I think a friend called it once a wannapreneur.
A wannapreneur. Oh my God, I love that.
That they do get stuck in that perfection paralysis in like, well, I have this great idea for this business, but I can't get business cards yet because, and I can't start my website yet because like my logo's not done or this or that or
Oh,
whatever.
yes.
Like just fucking do it.
Yeah.
Everything doesn't need to be in place. There will be no perfect time. There will be no perfect logo. There will be no perfect anything. But the point is you have to just start. You have to take that leap, and you have to trust that it's all falling in line exactly like it's supposed to. So start your website. Maybe you don't have a logo yet, but it doesn't matter.
No one
The
cares about your
fact,
logo.
yeah, also, no one cares about your business cards, but that's a whole different conversation. The fact of the matter is that you're taking action. You're saying yes to the universe. And when you say yes to the universe says yes back to you. And it opens up space where there was not space before. The point is, you have to start.
Give yourself a chance. Why do you think you're going to fail, love? Like, give yourself a chance to succeed. Give yourself a chance to go after what you want. What's the worst that can happen, really? And guess what? Whatever that worst is, we've been there. I mean, people have been in their worst, and it's never as bad as we think. It's never the only thing that's bad is the ego. That's the only thing that suffers, and that's good anyway. It keeps us humble. It's so good to just trust yourself and trust the process and go after it. I mean, I feel like this has been absolutely the key for me in growing the business as quickly as I have, is because I committed every day to doing it what's uncomfortable. And yeah, that required getting 50 no's. And yeah, that required, learning and scraping my knees and getting bruised ego and feeling insecure. And yeah, that required some sleepless nights and not knowing how I was going to pay my bills. Like, yeah, I got myself into that position. And guess what? I also got myself out of it. And it started because I said yes. I said yes to myself. I said yes to my business. And I said yes to living an amplified life. So I have in front of me U Squared. It's the book that I recommend for every single one of my clients. So if you don't have this book, you need to own this book, and we'll add it to the show notes. So one of the chapters is Change Your Personal Rules for Success. And he says, quantum leaps require paradoxical behavior, unusual moves, actions that on the surface often seem to contradict common sense. As human beings, though, we ordinarily go with the obvious. We fall into the habit of relying on behaviors that seem to have worked best for us over the years. When we take an approach that seems to be very serviceable and which enables us to perform well and succeed, we become very attached to it. We don't readily relinquish that habit pattern. In fact, there's a tendency to follow our favorite approach more and more often, such that we get better and better at handling things that particular way. This adroitness with a certain approach results in our overdependence on the strategies and tactics it involves. We resist new maneuvers because they make us feel clumsy, awkward, and more at risk. But if you want to accelerate your rate for achievement rapidly, you must search out and vigorously employ new behaviors, new attitudes. You must be willing to break out of your routines in order to make the quantum leap. So your historically most dependable behaviors can become the major obstacles for future success. Just because something has gotten you to where you are now doesn't mean that same thing is what's going to take you into the future. If you want to go somewhere you've never been before, guess what? You're going to have to do what you've never done before.
Yeah, this one can be a little bit hard for me because as much as I love taking quantum leaps and as good as I've gotten at being uncomfortable, I also really love my routines. I love my consistency of my morning routine. I love, coming home and the cats are there, and I love my just my expected things in life. And it's such an interesting juxtaposition of how I am in my business. It's almost like my home life, I want to be super routine and super predictable and super easy. And then I want my business to be this big, massive, thriving, changing, expansive monster of its own,
Yeah, I think that, we all have parts of our lives where we don't really feel like we want to get out of the comfort zone in. And some of that, I think it's okay, simply because we can't invite too much change in our lives at any given time. So I think for you, Bri, because you're so expansive in your business, you need some of that grounding of your home life to be stable in order for you to then feel confident in being able to grow big in your business. I know for me, as much as I love traveling, and I'm a wanderlust person, and I grew up traveling. I was on international flights before I was 2 years old. I lived in Japan, Brazil. I get that. And for me, in order for me to feel really comfortable in life, not comfortable, really grounded and solid, I have to have a home base. So does that mean that I'm not taking quantum leaps because I like to be comfortable at home? Not necessarily. It's just by having a home base and a really strong foundation, I then can move forward in my business and in my life in a big way. So I love that you brought that up, Bri, because I think that that's so true, where, we just need a solid foundation in order for us to feel comfortable quantum leaping.
So, this is a really great segue into our interview with our guest because she just took an amazing trip and an amazing project on to record these women doing these amazingly uncomfortable things. So, why don't we get on with it?
This conversation I know is going to be so, so good.
Well, let me tell our guests a little bit more about Sarah. So, Sarah Moshman is an Emmy Award winning documentary filmmaker dedicated to empowering women and girls through media. Her latest documentary is called Losing Sight of Shore, which follows the extraordinary journey of 4 women who set out to row across the Pacific Ocean. And I have to tell you, I've been following Sarah's journey to do this, and it's pretty freaking amazing.
Welcome to our podcast, Sarah.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So the first question that we ask all of our guests, and I'm actually really interested to hear your answer, is what does it look like for you to live an amplified life?
For me to live an amplified life, I feel like is living life on my own terms, not letting anyone else dictate what is success and what is happiness, and really choosing how to define those terms for me, and following my own path. I try not to worry too much about what anyone else is doing and to focus on my own dreams, my own goals, and how to achieve those goals. So for me, living an amplified life is just having the freedom to make choices, even when other people aren't making similar choices, but to live life on your own terms.
So I love this idea of not living by the status quo. I feel like it's a really poignant theme in my life. So what does success look like to you? Like, what does it mean to you, and how do you create that in your life?
Yeah, I think it's something that evolves. I can, define it for myself right now, but I think what's exciting is I used to believe that one award or one accolade or one project could really define me or make me feel successful or happy, but really, our careers are long. Life is long, hopefully, if we're lucky. So for me, that definition is constantly changing. And so now I really try to focus on working on projects that have meaning, that have heart, that have purpose, and that further my career, personally, professionally, financially, of course, but really making an impact. To me, success is creating films, helping create media that matters and that can actually inspire and uplift women all over the world.
Amazing. And I know that a lot of our listeners are currently going through the transition of living a life based on everyone else's expectation of them, and maybe even their own expectation of themselves, transitioning into living a life by design, living a life that they're excited about. And I'm curious if you experienced that transition where you went from thinking that this is what life was going to lead you and then changing paths, and what that looked like for you.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I went to film school. I wanted to make films since I was a kid. This is really all I've ever wanted to do. But there's so many different jobs or ways to create income when it comes to filmmaking, and it's tough. It's certainly a tough path to go down. But when I got out of film school, I moved out to Los Angeles pretty immediately and started working in reality television. I worked on Dancing with the Stars and shows on MTV, ABC, NBC, Lifetime, Bravo, Food Network, all of those. And it was a great experience, and I learned so much. And, after a while, you move up in the ranks and you start to make good money. But it just wasn't filling me up in the way that I wanted it to. You're working 12, 16, 18 hours a day sometimes, and you come home. And for me personally, I don't judge anyone else that chooses to do that. It just didn't fill up my soul. And I wanted to do something more, and I wanted to create content that I had more ownership over, but really content that could inspire in a more worldwide, uplifting way. So it was in 2012 when I came up with the idea for the Empowerment Project, which is my first feature-length documentary. And I drove across the U.S. with 4 other female filmmakers, and we interviewed inspirational women from all walks of life. We took this 7,000-mile, month-long road trip, and interviewed a pilot, athlete, astronaut, mathematician, biologist, all these different incredible women. Because I think I was searching for my own answers, and that's really what that film is about. It's the journey of the five of us really making that transition from, working at jobs maybe that we didn't love as much as we wanted to love them, and looking for more meaning and looking to define success. So I was certainly going through a lot of that in 2012, 2013 when we made that film. And that was such an incredible experience for me to stand up and say, hey, I have this dream. I need help to achieve it. We did a Kickstarter campaign to raise money, took this month-long road trip, and we finished the film in April of 2014, so about 2 years ago. And since completing the Empowerment Project, we've screened it over 300 times around the world.
Wow.
Starting conversations about empowerment and equality and not being afraid to fail. So it's just been this extraordinary experience. And it all started with just this little feeling inside me, like this little, this fear, this anxiety, this like wonder, to do something greater than myself. And so that's really propelled me to now work on my current film, Losing Sight of Shore. And I hope this all just continues. So it's certainly scary. And it's not just you officially move on to this other career path, and it's not so cut and dry, but you do your best, and each day you put one foot in front of the other to try to live that life.
So tell us more about Losing Sight of Shore. I mean, I know
Sure.
that you and I have had some private conversations as it was all unfolding, and you had, like you were saying, some times where you didn't quite know how it was going to happen, or, if you were going to be able to get the funding for it, or if it was even going to, come to fruition. But it's been amazing seeing the whole process kind of unfold.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been quite an adventure. I'm right in the thick of it, so it's never really solved or over. But basically, in January of last year, 2015, as I said, I made this documentary called The Empowerment Project, and with that, I've been meeting all kinds of amazing people around the world, including a blogger named Fiona Tatton in the UK. She runs a blog called Womanthology. It's wonderful. And she said we had done some interviews back and forth, some interviews like this, and in January of last year, she just sent me an email that said, hey, Sarah, I heard about these 4 women. They're going to row across the Pacific Ocean. They seemed like someone, people you want to connect with. They, their stories like right up your alley. Let me know if you want me to make an introduction. And my first thought was, well, I've never rowed before. I don't spend any time on the ocean. So this is so not for me. I'm not going to make a film about them. But, something was like, well, you should probably Skype with them and just compliment their awesomeness and then move along with your life. And this was literally the day before I was going to go on an 8-city, 8-week tour with the Empowerment Project, which I was, so excited about. So my head was so not in the space of like, look for a new film, like jump on board with something huge and new and scary. But I Skyped with Laura and Natalia, who are 2 of the rowers. They're called the Coxless Crew. And within the hour that I Skyped with them, it went from, hey, how are you? Cool, good to meet you, to like, I'm making a movie about this. This is extraordinary. I was just so taken by their passion and the danger of this journey. I mean, they were setting out to row from San Francisco, California, all the way to Cairns, Australia, 8,446 miles. And when you hear about someone or a group of people setting out to do something so dangerous and risky and, amazing, it just makes you want to, amplify and rise to their level. I mean, it was so clear to me that this was not a story about rowing at all. I mean, these women are not professional athletes. Some of them had never even rowed before. This is a group of people that wanted to test the power of the human spirit and leave their comfort zone, and all the things that we're talking about, all the things that we all struggle with as humans, they were just going to put into this literal journey across the Pacific. And something about that was so inspiring to me. And so I asked them if, they had anyone to tell their story, and they really hadn't gotten that far, but they were leaving in like 2 months. So it all happened very fast. We continued to Skype with each other for those couple months while I was on that tour. And then April 20th of 2015, so just over a year ago, is when I met them for the first time in San Francisco, 4 days before they were going to leave on their journey. So I started interviewing all of them and their family members and, filming the entire preparation to leave. I bought them cameras. I taught them how to use the cameras, and they set off in this 29-foot pink ocean rowing boat on April 20th, 2015. I'll never forget it. I mean, it was this electrifying moment of like, holy shit, they're seriously going to row across the Pacific Ocean right now. There they go. So it was this amazing front row seat. I mean, I wasn't on the boat with them, but I met them along the way. So they stopped in Hawaii and then in Samoa, and then, spoiler alert, they made it all the way to Australia. And so I was there. I was, it was me and their family and their shore support, this wonderful guy named Tony Humphreys. And sometimes their family couldn't even be there. So it was like really just me, my very small crew, and Tony at these these huge moments where they're taking their first steps and eating solid food again for the first time. I mean, just unreal. So it's been quite an adventure just following them, but also having this project come together has been really tough and really exciting. I've invested a lot of my own money. I have investors in the project. I just received a grant from the Tribeca Film Institute, which was so great. I gotten some donations. So, it's every film is kind of like this. You beg, borrow, and steal to get it done. And I still have a lot of money to raise, and I'm in post-production now. So yeah, I'm crossing my own Pacific, as I like to say, to make this movie. But I just want to honor their journey and their courage and bravery and tell a good story.
What has been your biggest learning and your biggest takeaway from watching these women endeavor in such a big idea?
Yeah, I think, the core of the message and what I love about it, and it's so universal because, they're from the UK and South Africa and rode from America to Australia. So to me, there's no, it's not about where they're from. To me, this is a story about not giving up. They had literally everything thrown at them in this journey. I mean, they rode 24 hours a day, 2 hours on, 2 hours off. So they're only sleeping for about an hour and a half at a time for 9 months. They went through this polyphasic sleeping pattern. They were eating essentially baby food on the boat, this freeze-dried ration packs of mush. It's pretty gross what they're eating every day. The bathroom situation is not pleasant. It's like a bucket and chuck it situation. So they were never comfortable. I mean, that's what I love about their story is there was never a time on the boat where they were comfortable. They're either physically exerting themselves or in this tiny cabin, sweating it out in a sauna. And why? I think the biggest question people ask me is, why? Who would do this? Who would sign up for that? But to me, it's just the entire journey is this big metaphor for these challenges that we all face in our lives. And if we can make it through and lose sight of shore and make it all the way to the other side, we'll be better for it. And that's certainly what I'm experiencing as a filmmaker. And it's certainly something that I take with me to any challenge that I will face and that they will face in their lives. So it's just a very powerful example of what we're all capable of when we don't let these obstacles get in our way and we keep going. They say stroke by stroke, and for us it's probably just put one foot in front of the other. But what a tremendous lesson about life, in any sense, that we can all cross our Pacific.
I love the topic of being uncomfortable. I think, again, that's just one thing in my life that I'm I know if I'm getting too comfortable that I'm doing it wrong. So if you're willing, I would love for you to share one of the most uncomfortable things that you've ever faced in your life.
Oh, well, I think making a film in general is pretty uncomfortable. I mean, you really have to drop everything. I mean, for me, this is full time and it's not, yielding any income yet. I believe that this film will be profitable and emotionally successful and all those things. But pretty much every day I have to wake up and stay focused on my goal, even though it's not having a direct relation to my bank account. But I believe, and even if the project doesn't yield any income, that's okay. I will have had a tremendous experience and adventure, but it's certainly something that I'm striving towards as a practical businesswoman, entrepreneur, filmmaker. Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of a very specific example of being uncomfortable other than just wanting to every day sort of just drop this and say, well, maybe I'll just go get a regular job, or, I should just for a couple months go back to this other life that I had. But I know that even on my worst days alone, as a filmmaker, as an entrepreneur, are still better than my best days, working for someone else's dream. I want to work for my own, and perhaps that's not sustainable forever, but for right now in my life, it's good to be uncomfortable. And especially after having been through the Empowerment Project and seeing how powerful it is when you share your vision and your dream and inspiration with people all over the world, I know that it's worth it. I've already crossed my Pacific once before, so I know that this is all worth it, and hopefully it'll be like that exponentially even better this time.
That's just so beautiful and so inspiring. I think many of our listeners are in that experience of choosing, not knowing whether to choose being comfortable and staying with the path that their trajectory is taking them on, or being uncomfortable and following the calling of their soul, right? And following
Right.
the calling of whatever excites them. So I feel like this is super inspiring. And I'm curious, who do you consider to be your biggest role model or mentor that has shown you how to move forward and how to be okay with being uncomfortable?
Yeah, well, certainly the women of the Costless crew are certainly mentors and role models of mine. I think I will always take with me. They're just like us. They're around our age. They're totally fearless, and we're okay with being uncomfortable for so long to achieve their dreams. So certainly, the women of the Coxless crew are my role models. I also really look up to my parents. My dad is a filmmaker and TV producer as well, so he's always been a big inspiration to me, and he never made me feel like my gender was something to feel like I would be held back or disadvantaged in any way. Like, there was never a conversation where he said, well, things are going to be harder for you because you're a woman. I think that's something that I have understood as time went on from experiences of my own and societal information and pressures. But I've always admired that, my dad has been really positive and encouraging, because we have so much in common in our careers. And my mother as well. She was a chemical engineer for 18 years and then switched careers to be a lawyer when I was in high school. So I just have so much respect for her for raising kids and having this incredible career. And then I always think about Sheryl Sandberg as well, who wrote Lean In, because the quote in her book, "What would you do if you weren't afraid to fail?" is something that really motivated me to make the Empowerment Project, which really propelled this whole journey and this whole lifestyle. So I'm very grateful to women like Sheryl Sandberg that go out on a limb and project these concepts and these topics that we all need to be aware of how we are in the workplace as women and how we can improve our futures.
Sarah, I love the inspiration that your father gave you about women not being a condition of your success, or being a woman is not a condition of your success, and that, you can do whatever it is that you set your mind to. And I feel like a lot of women were not given that message. So bravo to your dad for honoring your success and your power, regardless of what gender you were born into. And I'm also curious because I know as women, we get to experience a lot of different opportunities than men. And have you actually experienced a moment where you felt like your gender played a role in your success or not in your success?
Certainly, I feel like I've experienced both, but I tend to like to focus on the positive. So for example, when filming the Empowerment Project, we were interviewing women of all different industries, all different ages, ethnicities, and we wanted to create a really positive, warm, nurturing environment where they felt like they could open up and really tell us these raw, emotional stories that could hopefully inspire women around the country and around the world. And I think us being an all-female crew was a huge advantage, I think, because we have this shared experience and this shared history as women that maybe we're not all conscious of, but certainly when we all get in a room together, it feels really warm and fuzzy to be able to interview women. And not only that, we were also mentoring young women on each of our sets on the Empowerment Project. So we had an aspiring female filmmaker come and learn how to use the camera and the lighting, and she got to observe our interview and ask us any questions that she wanted. So it was sort of this multi-tiered experience of empowerment. And in that sense, I felt like being a woman was incredibly important to get the interviews that we were trying to get and to get the message across. Like it felt like no one else could have made the film that we made. So that was certainly a huge advantage. I've definitely felt the opposite as well, but I don't find value in sharing those stories because I think I'd rather focus on the positive and just think about how there are so many advantages to being a woman, especially in the film industry where storytelling is such a beautiful, intimate, emotional thing to do.
Awesome. And what advice, like what would be your top piece of advice to give to women in film?
Yeah, certainly I would say don't wait for anyone's permission. I think a lot of women, and I meet so many young girls around the country when we do screenings of the Empowerment Project, and I get to speak to middle school girls and high school girls and college women. It's awesome. And I think the common theme I've noticed is that we need this permission to get started. Like we're not sure if we're good enough, and we're waiting for someone like a teacher or a parent or a friend, whoever, to say, yes, you're good enough. Yes, you should do this. And I think if we can give ourselves that permission, then we're so much better off and we don't have to wait. There's something so powerful about just picking up a camera and starting to tell that story that you've always wanted to tell. That's what I love about documentary is you don't even need a script. You don't necessarily need a big crew or a big budget. It's really about the story, and it can start really, really small. So there's no reason why anyone, I mean, the phones we have in our pockets, the cameras that are readily available to us, excuse me, there's no reason that women and men, of course, can pick up a camera and start telling the next great story. So that's my biggest piece of advice would be just don't wait for that permission because it may never come. So if you can give yourself that permission, then how powerful is that?
I love that. And I feel like that's one of Bri and Mai's favorite soapbox to get on top of, which is don't wait, don't wait, don't wait, don't wait for someone to give you permission, don't wait until you're ready, don't wait until the right time, because there is no right time. No one will give you permission and you're never going to feel ready. And the more that you can just say yes and go for it and just try it out, even if you don't know enough, you will learn enough by the time you do it and go for it. And so thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing that, because I think that's so poignant for the majority of women. We, I think, are born feeling like we have to wait until this quote unquote ready, and that's just an illusion. It doesn't happen that way.
Totally.
So then the next point of conversation that I would love to know more about from you is what was your first experience like picking up a camera? Like what was that like for you in deciding you were going to do this, maybe even when you weren't feeling ready or you weren't feeling, completely prepared?
Yeah, I mean, being around cameras has just kind of been a fiber of my upbringing as well. We had a dark room in my basement, so my dad taught me to develop black and white photographs when I was little, and I have this picture of myself holding a light meter. I couldn't be more than 2, so this is very much like just who I am. But I think the most poignant experience that I had was in high school. We were given this assignment in my English class to do some kind of book report or conquer some kind of topic with a paper, and instead I decided to make a documentary, and I was the only one in the class that kind of didn't do the paper, and it seemed like more work, but actually it was way more fun. And so I ended up making a documentary called Family Isn't Just Blood. It was very profound. I was 16 and I grew up in this, typical family dynamic of mom, dad, brother, sister. So I was very interested in my classmates and what family dynamics they had grown up in that were perhaps atypical. So I interviewed my friend that had gay parents. I interviewed another friend that was a product of artificial insemination. I was really fascinated in people that were different than me and wanted to hear their stories. So that's really my first experience making a documentary, and then showing it to my classmates was really exciting. To see my name in the credits, which is still like my favorite part of the process, is sitting in a dark theater with an audience watching the movie, and then my name shows up on the end. That was a very powerful experience for me, and it just made me want to make more films. And so I made another short documentary in high school, and then went to film school, and now, obviously my professional life, it's what I love to do. So that experience certainly was poignant for me to go through the process of having an idea, executing it successfully, showing it to an audience, and getting that praise and that awareness, and just opening up people's minds to a different idea. I mean, what's better than that? And I have found that the camera is simply the greatest tool at my disposal, and being able to know how to use it has allowed me to meet people I never otherwise would have met, like Olympians and Super Bowl champions and amazing rowers in different countries. I mean, you name it, and go to places I never otherwise would have gone. So what a magical experience, and I hope to continue doing it.
That's so fabulous. I'm curious to know how your instructor or your teacher in high school reacted. Because I used to be a total rule breaker too, where I'd get assigned something and I would stay within the rules, but I would do it completely opposite of like what they wanted.
Right. I think she loved it. I mean, really, at the end of the day, I did way more work than anyone else to just write a paper that's, at the time you had to go to the library, of course, and like write a bibliography. But I went above and beyond, so I think it went well. I'm pretty sure I got a good grade, but who knows?
What's next for you, Sarah? What's coming up for you in the next couple months?
Yeah, so I'm in full-on post-production for Losing Sight of Shore. So they achieved this extraordinary goal. They set 2 world records. They're the first team of 4 to ever row across the Pacific Ocean. They're the fastest team to have ever done so. Obviously, you kind of get the fastest when you're the first, I guess. But hey, I've never done anything like that, so that's awesome. And yeah, so I'm cutting the film together now with my amazing editor. His name's Pete Seraphim, and we are just about at a rough cut. So they achieved the goal in January, and here we are in May. So we're working towards a rough cut of the film in the next month. And then I met so many amazing production companies and distributors and financiers and sales agents when I went to Tribeca for the film market as part of the grant I received. So really the next step is to sell the film and hopefully be able to show it to a worldwide audience, premiere at a big festival, and then hopefully do some kind of theatrical release and then get the film on a digital platform so that anyone can watch it. So that's my year, is really trying to get the film to a good enough place where someone would want to buy it, raise the rest of the money that I need. So that's really my full-time focus now. And next year, hopefully, will be the fruits of all that labor, premiering at a festival, showing it in different cities around the world, hopefully. So that's my main focus for now. And I'm always... What I've learned from the Coxless crew and from Losing Sight of Shore is just always to be open and to be excited for what's next and not turn away from it. It doesn't always come at this like perfect moment. I think it's a lot like falling in love. When a project comes my way that speaks to me, it doesn't matter what's happening in my life. I should pursue it. I mean, that's what I think I've learned. And it hits you like a ton of bricks. When it's right, it's so right. So I'm excited that any day I wake up, it could be that next great idea. So I'm looking forward to whatever project or experience is after this and as a result of this.
Oh, I love it.
So beautiful.
We read Big Magic. Have you read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert?
No. I haven't. Oh, not yet. No.
Oh, it's divine. I mean, if you have a chance, I know you're pretty
I'd love to.
in your production, but yeah, it's just such a beautiful book. And I think what you just mentioned is something that she mentioned as well, which is when you get hit with inspiration, it's kind of like creativity is knocking at your door, and you can say no if you want, but then that creative idea is going to find somebody else. And so if it's something that excites you, that lights you up, you have to say yes to it right away, or else it's going to go and it's going to disappear. And so I love that you found that to be true in your life, and that you're finding ways of saying yes to these ideas and these creative endeavors, even if it doesn't feel like the right time, because I think that's often how creativity hits. It's never how we think it's going to look, and it never comes at the time we think it's going to come. And that's the joy and the beauty of it is navigating the how to say yes to things and juggle it without, one, being overwhelmed, of course, but two, while having fun and the uncertainty and the not knowing how it's all going to come together.
Certainly. I think about that all the time, actually. That one email that my friend Fiona sent me, I easily could have said, like, meh, I'm too busy. I'm going on this tour. I'm not looking for a new project. Like, I don't need to connect with these women. And my life would be totally different right now. I'm so grateful that something about that email said, well, just Skype with them and see how it goes. And then that led to all of this. And my life is totally different after having met them. And I'm so inspired. And who knows where this project will lead. And that's what keeps me going. It's not an award. It's not one festival or one distributor or one opportunity. It's that this is going to lead to something I never could have imagined before knowing about it. So that's what keeps me going.
I love it. Sarah, thank you so much for sharing
Thank
your
you.
wisdom with us today. I cannot wait personally to see Losing Sight of Shore because I've been hearing about it now for the last year and watching the whole journey on
Me
Facebook.
too. I can't wait to see it either.
So where can people learn more about you and find out how they can watch the documentary on their own?
Sure. So we're on Facebook, Losing Sight of Shore, facebook.com/Losing Sight of Shore. On Twitter, we're at LSOS Film. So that's for the film. And then myself on Twitter, I'm at Sarah Mosh, and on Instagram at Sarah Moshman. And I'm happy to connect with anyone.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time, Sarah. We so appreciate you. Thank you for all the work that you're doing in the world.
And congratulations. Like, seriously, congratulations for saying yes, for taking the responsibility of creativity, and for really getting your project out into the world. Because that's, you know, we look at it as something kind of small, and it's not. It is not small. And so congratulations. It's beautiful.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And for all of you listening, you can find us at facebook.com/The Amplify Collective. And you can find us on Instagram at The Amplify Collective and on Twitter at The Amplify Co. We love you all so dearly. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll be back next week.